The desert sun burned like an open furnace, bleaching everything into shades of bone and rust. A small figure trudged toward forward operating base Chapman, helmet slipping, boots too big, a pack heavier than she was. Claire Bennett kept her eyes on the gravel. 20 pounds of armor, 30 gears. Every breath tasted like dust. Around her, soldiers moved with effortless confidence, bigger, louder, certain of their place. They didn't need to speak. She felt their judgment in the silence. A whisper caught the air. She won't last a week. Harris, probably. She'd heard worse. In training. At home. Her fingers brushed the dog tags beneath her shirt, worn smooth by doubt. I promised you, Dad. No shortcuts. No backing down. Above the wall, the sky stretched endlessly and too quiet. Out here, quiet never lasted. A distant thump rolled across the valley. Then another. Claire froze as helmet snapped forward. Weapons up. Harris glanced back. Welcome to Afghanistan, Doc. Claire gripped her straps tighter, heart racing. She thought proving herself would be the hardest part. She was wrong. Before the sun fell, she'd carry more than gear. She'd carry lives. Before we start, ever been underestimated? Drop your story in the comments and hit like and subscribe for more stories. Dust clung to the sweat on Claire Bennett's face as she crawled under barbed wire, her elbows carving shallow trenches into the Texas dirt. Her helmet felt 2 sizes too big. Her rucksack, like it belonged to someone twice her size. Maybe it did. Move it, Bennett! Drill Sergeant Harper's voice thundered from above the obstacle course. You want the Taliban waiting for you to catch your breath? She gritted her teeth, dragging herself forward, muscles trembling with effort. The pack straps bit into her shoulders, 70 pounds of bandages, gauze, and expectation pressing down. When she finally cleared the wire, she collapsed in the dust for a half second, just enough time to hear the laughter. Not cruel laughter, just matter of fact, like the sound you make when physics proves you're right. If I go down, Morrison had announced one afternoon, loud enough to turn heads. Somebody better drag me out. No offense, Bennett, but I'm not dying while you look for a forklift. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel, exact, but it got deep. Claire said nothing, just adjusted the strap on her back and stood. Inside her pocket, she could feel the worn curve of her father's dog tags pressing against her palm like a promise. Her father's voice came back to her then, soft but steady. Claire, your size doesn't define you, your heart does. And sometimes a big heart in a small package can do things that surprise everyone. He'd been a Navy corpsman, 3 tours in Vietnam, scars like faded maps on his arms. Cancer from Agent Orange took him when she was 16, but not before making her swear. If you're going to serve, serve completely. Hold nothing back. That vow burned in her like a brand every time someone looked at her like she didn't belong. Day after day, she fought physics. The casualty drag was her crucible. 180-pound dummy, slick with dust and sweat, dragging across the gravel like dead weight while her legs shook and buckled. 10 feet. That's all she could manage before her body gave out. Her classmates made it look easy. She found another way, memorized every trick, every leverage technique the manuals didn't teach. Worked until her hands blistered and her lungs burned raw. If strength were measured in stubbornness, Claire would have been the strongest soldier there. And still, doubts lingered. Hers, theirs, everyone's. Private Jackson was the only one who never let it show. Lanky, easy smile, a little country drawl. He made sure she got extra protein bar at chow. Always picked her first for body drills when others hesitated. You know what I think? He said one evening, wiping down his rifle as the sun dipped low. If I ever go down out there, I'd want you coming for me. Size doesn't matter when someone's got a heart like yours. She smiled, didn't answer, but later that night, lying in her bunk, staring at the ceiling fan slicing the dark, one question wouldn't let go. Would heart be enough when bullets started flying? 2 weeks later, Afghanistan gave her the answer, and the world would never look at Claire Bennett the same way again. The Kunar province didn't just burn, it swallowed heat and spat it back in waves that shimmered off the rocks. It felt like breathing through sandpaper, every gulp of air hot enough to scorch her throat. Claire shifted her aid bag higher on her shoulder, sweat slicking the straps against her uniform. By now, she had learned to make herself small inside the armor, to let the ceramic plates sway without knocking her off balance. She moved like someone carrying borrowed strength. But the ground changed that morning, gravel turning to loose shale, the ridge narrowing to a knife-edged trail. The sun wasn't up yet, but the sky was the pale gray of something about to split open, and somewhere beyond the ridge, someone was waiting for them. She felt it before she heard it, a tightening in the air, the kind of silence that meant the world was holding its breath. The first crack didn't sound real, more like a stick snapping in the distance. The second one erased any doubt. Ground slammed into the rocks. Dust exploded in her face as bullets chipped away their cover. That distinct supersonic crack slicing the air above her helmet. Contact left, Williams roared. His voice was all gravel and fury, like sound alone could keep them alive. The squad scuttered. Claire hit the ground hard, her knees slamming rock through her pants. Instinct took over. Find cover. Get small. Check your people. Except there was no real cover. Just stones pretending to be walls, and a dry creek bed that might hide them, but wouldn't stop a round from searing through the bone. And then she saw Pierce, sprawled on the open ground, maybe 40 meters ahead. Center mass hit. She didn't need to see the wound to know. His body twitched like a marionette losing its strings and bleeding out. Claire's stomach dropped. The mat came fast and cold. 40 meters of open ground, under fire, with a 90-pound aid bag on her back. Zero margin for error. Bullets kept tearing up the dirt, sending little geysers into the air. Whoever was shooting had the high ground and wasn't missing by much. Covering fire, push left, Williams bellowed. But every time someone moved, the ridge spat more rounds. They were pinned. Claire pressed her cheek to the stone, heart pounding against the rock like it wanted to crack it open. She tasted dust and copper. Pierce wasn't moving anymore, just his chest, rising too fast, too shallow. Shock. If his airway closed, if the bleeding didn't stop. She didn't finish the thought. Jackson caught her eye from 20 feet away. He was crouched low, rifle tied to his shoulder. Big, solid Jackson, the one who'd always looked out for her when the others didn't. He mouthed it, just 2 words, "I'll go." And in that instant, the world tilted. Because of course he'd try, because he was built for this. Long legs, arms like steel cables, not her, never her. Jackson started to rise. No, it was barely a breath at first, then louder. No! The sound startled her. Where had it come from? Her hands were shaking, but she didn't notice until she reached for the ground and her fingers scraped rock hard enough to draw blood. Her father's voice slipped through the chaos like a threat. When someone's dying, Claire, you don't think, you move. Except thinking was all she could do. 1,000 calculations screaming in her head, all leading to the same place. If she stayed down, they'd die. If she went, she might. The barrel fire from the ridge shifted, short, controlled bursts. They were adjusting, waiting for someone to make a mistake big enough to end them. Claire pulled the strap on her aid bag tighter. The nylon bit into her shoulder. Good. Pain meant real. She drew in one slow breath, tasting grit, heat, and something else. The thin metallic tinge of fear. Then she moved and didn't stop, because she knew something with absolute brutal clarity now. If she froze, someone died, and freezing wasn't an option. The first step was the hardest. Claire rolled out from behind the shattered wall and hit the dirt, pressing herself flat against the ground. The world erupted in sound, the whip crack of sound slicing the air, the sharp hiss as they chewed into the sand. Every instinct screamed to crawl back into cover, to let someone bigger, stronger, braver to do this instead. But there was no one else. 40 meters. That's all that stood between her and two bleeding soldiers. 40 meters across open ground that might as well have been a mile of broken glass under a storm of lead. She started to crawl. The medic bag on her back felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, dragging at her shoulders, snagging on rocks. Her elbows carved trenches in the sand, skin tearing open against jagged stones. Her knees screamed, pants shredded, sweat stung her eyes, mixing with grit until she could barely see. 10 meters. She froze as a bullet snapped so close she felt the air move, hot and sharp across her cheek. The ground spat dirt into her mouth. She clenched her jaw, biting down so hard she tasted blood. Keep moving. Every inch forward was a war. Her muscles shook with effort. Her lungs burned like fire, but quitting wasn't an option. Behind her, Sergeant Williams' voice ripped through the chaos, hoarse from shouting. CAS en route. Hold your positions. One friendly move. Close air support. Help was coming, but Claire knew better than to believe in fast rescues. Out here, a minute could be the difference between life and death. 15 meters. Her heartbeat hammered against the dirt. The sound of gunfire faded for a second, drowned by the pounding in her ears. 20. She lifted her eyes. Pierce lay still. The sand beneath him bled crimson, pooling like dark ink under the merciless sun. Her pulse slammed in her ears. She pushed harder, faster. He needed her now. She pushed harder, ignoring the fire in her shoulders, ignoring the voice in her head whispering that she was too small for this, too weak. The same voice that had haunted her since training. Since that first day, Harper had called her kid instead of soldier. 30 meters. Another burst of fire chewed up the ground ahead. Walking closer, they had her range now, any second. A round smack into the rock inches from her face, spraying shards into her skin. Her vision went wide for a heartbeat. When it cleared, she spat grit, wiped blood from her cheek, and kept moving. Think of Ted. Not the way he looked in the hospital bed, tubes everywhere. Think of him standing tall in uniform, smiling as he told her. Bravery isn't about size, Claire. It's about what you do when fear is sitting in your chest. She crawled faster. She reached Pierce with a gasp that tore her throat raw. For a heartbeat, she thought she was too late, until his eyes fluttered open, hazy but alive. Hey, soldier, she whispered, forcing her voice steady. You're not dying today. She slid her arms under his shoulders and pulled. Nothing. He didn't budge an inch. Pierce was built like a tank, easily 100 pounds heavier than her, and 60 pounds of gear, and he was a dead weight. Her arms trembled. Her breath came in ragged bursts. This was impossible. She stripped his body armor, tossing it aside, grabbed the drag handle sewn into his vest, and hooked it over her shoulder. Changed her angle, dug her boots into the sand, and heaved with everything she had. 1 foot, 2. Her legs shook violently. Her back screamed in protest. The strap burned into her collarbone like fire, but Pierce moved, just enough to give her hope. She dragged him meter by meter towards the creek bed. Every pull felt like a lifeline. Every second, bullets snapped overhead, chipping the earth, sending hot shards against her face. Halfway there, a scream ripped through the chaos, a sound that froze her blood. Morrison. She whipped her head around. He was 20 meters away, thrashing weakly in the sand. His leg wound had opened wide, and now blood pumped in bright, pulsing arcs, arterial spray. He didn't have minutes, he had seconds. Claire's heart slammed into her ribs. Finish Pierce, or leave him and go for Morrison. There was no choice at all. She dropped Pierce, whispering, "Don't you dare quit on me," before crawling back into the open. The enemy fire intensified, zeroing in on her. Dirt lipped and danced with every stride. Her squad laid down suppressive bursts, but it wasn't enough. She could feel the rounds waking toward her. Deliberate, patient. 10 meters to Morrison. She slid on her belly, boots kicking up sand. A round sliced through her sleeve, grazing skin. Pain flared hot, sharp, but she didn't stop. She reached him and almost gagged. His leg was a mess, blood soaking the ground in widening pool. His skin was gray, his lips pale. "No, no, no, stay with me." She clamped her hands over the wound, pressing hard. Warm gushed between her fingers, sticky and slick. His eyes rolled, half-lidded. "Emma," he mumbled. His daughter's name. It cut through her like shrapnel. She didn't think, she acted. Grabbed his rifle sling and hers, tied them together into a makeshift harness, hooked it across her chest, then looped the other end under his good leg and belt. She turned him sideways, braced her feet and pulled. Nothing. She tried again, muscle screaming. This wasn't working. He was too heavy. "Come on, Claire, come on." She dug deep, into anger, into fear, into every ounce of stubbornness she owned, and heaved. He moved. Inches at first, then a foot, then two. Her breath tore from her lungs in harsh sobs. Her vision blurred with sweat. Her arms felt like they were ripping out of their sockets, but she kept moving. 1 meter, 2, 5. Behind her, Pierce was crawling, dragging himself toward the creek bed, leaving a jagged trail of red in the sand. 10 meters. A bullet struck so close it threw dirt in her face. She spat grit, coughed blood, and kept pulling. They had her bracketed now. It was only a matter of time. 15. Her legs gave out. She collapsed, face pressed into the dirt. For a second, everything went black at the edges. She wanted to let go so badly it scared her. Dad's voice again, fierce and clear. "Bravery isn't about size. It's about finishing the fight." She screamed and pushed. One last search, one last impossible pull. And then, the lip of the creek bed. Morrison slid over the edge, landing beside Pierce in a heap. Claire tumbled after, rolling into blessed cover as rounds cracked overhead. She lay there gasping, chest heaving, every muscle trembling. Her hands shook so hard he could barely unzip the medic bag. Pierce's breathing was shallow, Morrison's pulse weak and steady. She had dragged them out of that once. Now she had to do it again, without moving an inch. And somewhere beyond the chaos, faint but growing, came a sound she'd been praying for. A deep rhythmic drum rolled through the smoke, vibrating in her bones before it reached her ears. Medivac. Relief hit like a fist to the chest, then vanished just as fast, because distance was a killer, and so was time. Would they make it before her patient slipped away? Claire's gloves were slick with blood, warm, sticky, impossible to wipe away. Her mind wanted to freeze, to shut down, but her hands didn't ask for permission. They moved like they had in dark hallways of the training hospital, except nothing about this was sterile. Nothing was controlled. Every breath burned like smoke. Every heartbeat pounded like a gunfire still cracking beyond the rocks. Tourniquet first, Morrison. His thighs was shredded, meat and bone visible where the round has torn through. She looped the band high, yanked until her arms trembled, twisted the windlass until he screamed hoarse. The bleeding slowed. One problem barely contained. Next, Pierce. He was worse, so much worse. His chest heaved in rapid shallow jerks, the sound wet and broken. Claire jammed an IV into his arm with shaking hands, threading the catheter blindly through muscle memory. Back up, fluids in. Push the morphine just enough to dull hell without killing what was left of him. Her head kept counting time, seconds. That's all he has. The ground shook as another explosion rolled through the valley. Dust rained down like ash. She ducked low, pressed herself against Pierce, shielding him from flying gravel. And for half a second she thought, what if this is the last thing he feels? My hands. Not his family's, just my hands. Stay with me, Pierce, she rasped, forcing the words through a throat lined with grit. She flicked a pen light across his eyes and froze, one pupil blown wide, the other barely reacting. Her stomach dropped. Not good. Not good at all. Behind her, Morrison moaned, trying to move. She clamped a hand on his good shoulder without looking. Don't you dare. Stay still. Her voice cracked on the last word. A sound cut through the gunfire. Then, a low rumble building into a roar. For a wild heartbeat, she thought it was another blast, another death sentence. Then she heard it. Rotors. The medevac. Closer now. Coming fast. But not fast enough. Pierce convulsed one beneath her hands, then stilled. Claire's blood went cold. She pressed two fingers on his neck. Nothing. No, 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 no. Her voice broke as she tilted his head back, swept his airway with her fingers. Clear. She bent, ear to mouth. No breath, he's gone. Her vision tunneled. A ringing filled her ears, drowning out of everything. Bullets, shouts, even the helicopter slicing through the sky. For 1 second, the only sound was her own pulse screaming, "You failed." Then training surged like a slap. Not yet. Not while I'm breathing. She laced her fingers, locked her elbows, and drove down on his chest. 30 compressions, count them. Breathe for him. Again, again. The rhythm was burned into her bones. But textbook never mentioned body armor. Never mentioned an even dirt grinding into your knees while rounds threw the air a few feet away. Her shoulders screamed. Her wrist felt like glass. Come on, Pierce, don't you quit on me. She lost track of how many cycles. Her arms shook so badly she almost missed it. A flutter under her fingers when she checked. Pulse. Weak, thready, but there. Claire's breath hitched. That's it, come back to me. She kept pressure on Morrison's leg with one hand, while Pierce's chest rose in ragged automatic gasps. And then the sky tore open. The Black Hawk thundered overhead. Rotor wash kicking sand into little storms that stabbed her eyes. Voices cracked in her headset. 2 minutes on station, litter, ready now. Figures dropped from the bird, shadows solidifying into medics sprinting low. A stretcher bouncing between them. Their boots pounded toward her, cutting through the chaos like something out of a dream. The senior medic skidded to a stop, eyes sweeping the scene. 2 blood-soaked soldiers, and one tiny figure kneeling between them like some grim statue. He crouched fast, checking vitals, snapping orders to his partner. Then his voice loud over the rotor thunder. Who the hell dragged them out here? Claire opened her mouth. Nothing came out. The adrenaline that kept her moving was draining away, like water through sand. Her body shook so hard she thought her bones might rattle loose. From the rocks behind, Morrison's voice cracked through the chaos. She did, alone. The medic's head whipped back to her. For a heartbeat, his eyes didn't seem to understand what they were seeing. This small soldier, barely 5'2", gear hanging like borrowed armor, caked in blood that wasn't hers. Then something shifted in his face. Respect, raw and unfiltered. Outstanding work, soldier, he said. And it wasn't just words. It was a verdict, a vow. We've got them. You did your job. Pierce went first, strapped to the litter, lines snaking from both arms. Morrison next, conscious enough to grab her wrist as they lifted him. His voice was rasped, shredded with pain. You saved my life. His fingers tightened, his eyes burned through the grime on his face. Thank you. Claire tried to answer, couldn't. Her throat locked, tears scorching tracks through the dust. Then they were gone, hauled into the chopper, swallowed by the hurricane of spinning rotors. A blast of dust and heat chased her as the aircraft clawed skyward. And just like that, the noise began to fade. The gunfire sputtered, then died. Shadows slipped back into the mountains, leaving only smoke curling in the wind. Silence crashed down like a weight. For the first time in hours, or maybe years, Claire could hear her own breath, ragged, hollow, and then she realized. Every eye in the squad was on her. Sergeant Williams broke from the line, slow like a man stepping into a new world. His face was unreadable as he stopped in front of her. This was the man who'd called her a liability, who joked about bubble wrap, who'd once told her flat out she'd never make it out there. He looked at her now. Then he raised his hands. Not the lazy salute of a routine day, but something solemn, something heavy, the salute of a soldier honoring another soldier. One by one, the rest followed. 8 men standing in torn uniforms, boots in the blood-stained dust, rifles slung, saluting the smallest among them, saluting the one who had just carried the weight of 2 lives on her shoulders and refused to break. Claire tried to return it. Her hand barely lifted before it fell, shaking too hard to hold the line. She was soaked in blood. Pierce's, Morrison's, her own from a dozen invisible cuts. Her body felt like a broken instrument. But she was standing, and because of her, so were they. She thought that was the end. It wasn't. The night was over, but the war never really ends. Claire sat on a steel chair outside the medical tent, the chill of dawn settling on her shoulders like an extra weight. Her hands rested in her lap, raw and cracked from scrubbing blood that wouldn't come off. Not all of it belonged to her patients. Some stains lived deeper than skin. The bass felt different now, hushed, reverent almost, like even the wind knew what had happened out there. She'd saved them, both of them. Pierce and Morrison were still breathing because she refused to quit, when quitting would have been easy. But that truth didn't feel heroic. It felt heavy, because all she could see were the near misses, the flat line on Pierce, the gray pallor creeping over Morrison's face. The seconds where hope was a thread so thin it could snap even if she even breathed wrong. A shallow stretched across the ground. She looked up. Harris stood in the doorway, helmet under his arm. 3 other squad members behind him, big men with faces carved by dust and exhaustion, suddenly looking unsure of themselves. Hey, Harris said. Hey, she echoed, voice hoarse. He hesitated, then stepped inside. We want to give you something. One by one, they placed their unit badges on her cot. 8 worn rectangles of fabric, edges frayed from months in the field. In this world, badges are more than thread. They're trusts. Earned drop by drop, battle by battle. Harris cleared his throat. You're one of us now, always have been, I guess. We were just too stupid to see it. Then Williams moved forward. Sergeant, squad leader. The man who had once tried to keep her off the line. He peeled the patch from his sleeve, the one that had marked him as the old guard, and laid it on top of the others. I owe you an apology, he said quietly, and thank you for helping Pierce and Morrison. Claire blinked hard, the sting behind her eyes sharper than any battlefield grit. When they laughed, silence returned, broken only by the soft flap of the tent walls in the morning wind. She sat for a long time, staring at the small pile of patches. 8 symbols of belonging, 8 promises that she wasn't alone anymore. Her fingers found the dog tags at her neck, cool against her skin. Her father's tags. She held them tight, whispering into the stillness. I kept my promise, Dad. I served completely. I held nothing back. Word would spread, like all legends do, not in headlines, but in quiet conversations, in barracks whispers, in the respect that lingers long after the guns fall silent. Claire never sought recognition. She didn't need it. The real reward was here now, sewn into her gear and etched into her bones. Proof that courage isn't about size or muscle or the absence of fear. It's about that one impossible choice to act when no one else will. And out here, in the dust and blood and endless horizon, one truth held steady as the rising sun. Everyday heroes are all around us.